The world held its breath when a grainy audio clip surfaced online. A private family meeting at Mar-a-Lago, recorded without consent. Voices once confined to gilded walls now spilled into living rooms across America. Donald Trump's sharp tone cut through the static, followed by bursts of emotion from Melania, Ivanka, Don Jr., and even young Barron. It wasn't just gossip. It was an unfiltered glimpse into their inner turmoil, exposing cracks beneath their polished public facade. "Do you think anyone cares about what we want?" Ivanka's voice trembled in one particularly heated moment. "We're not people anymore, we're brands." Within hours, the recording went viral, sparking outrage, sympathy, and endless speculation. For better or worse, the Trump dynasty had been laid bare. Inside that opulent room, tensions simmer like champagne bubbles threatening to burst. Donald paced back and forth, his signature bravado masking deeper insecurities. "You all act like I'm some tyrant," he snapped, pointing a finger at Ivanka. "But who gave you your platform? Who made you untouchable?" Ivanka crossed her arms, jaw tightening. "Dad, this isn't about gratitude. It's about freedom. Freedom to be more than just Daddy's girl." Melania sat quietly on the edge of a velvet chair, her expression unreadable, but her silence deafening. When she finally spoke, her words landed like daggers. "Freedom. You talk about freedom while expecting loyalty? Maybe we're tired of being loyal to someone who doesn't see us as individuals." Barron shifted uncomfortably in the corner, his teenage frame dwarfed by the weight of adult arguments. "Can't we just stop pretending for once?" he muttered under his breath. No one heard him. Or maybe they chose not to. By morning, every major news outlet dissected the leak with surgical precision. CNN ran a panel debate titled "Trump Family Secrets, Betrayal or Humanity?" Fox News fired back with "Invasion of Privacy, the real crime here." Social media exploded with hashtags like "Trump Family Secrets" and "Mar-a-Lago leaks," dividing fans into warring factions. "This is exactly why celebrities can't have real lives," tweeted a popular culture critic. Every word becomes ammunition. Meanwhile, late-night hosts turned the scandal into comedic gold. "Looks like Mar-a-Lago isn't just leaking water, it's leaking secrets," quipped one host, earning thunderous applause. Yet amidst the noise, something quieter emerged. Curiosity. People wanted to know more, not just about the Trumps, but about themselves. What would they sound like if their own private conversations were exposed? Supporters rallied behind the Trumps, framing the leak as yet another attack on their privacy. "They're human beings, not puppets," wrote one fan on Twitter. "Leave them alone." Critics, however, saw hypocrisy. "Didn't they spend years mocking others for airing grievances?" asked a prominent journalist during a live broadcast. "Now they're crying foul when the tables turn?" Even within the family's inner circle, opinions clashed. A close friend of Melania's confided to reporters off-record. "She's always felt trapped, but she never wanted it to come out like this." Meanwhile, a former aide defended Donald fiercely. "He built an empire for his family. How dare they question his love?" Mar-a-Lago shimmered under the Florida sun, its gold accents gleaming like armor against the chaos unfolding inside. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over mahogany furniture, yet the air felt heavy with resentment. Donald stood near the grand piano, gripping the edge of the lid as though it might steady him. His eyes darted between his children, searching for signs of betrayal or loyalty. "I didn't build this life so we could tear each other apart," he said, his voice low but laced with anger. Melania rose slowly, smoothing her silk blouse. "Maybe it's time you stopped building things and started seeing people," she replied, her tone icy yet tinged with sadness. For all its glamour, Mar-a-Lago couldn't shield them from the truth. Wealth and fame were no match for fractured hearts. As the scandal unfolded, universal truths bubbled to the surface. Fame wasn't just a pedestal, it was a prison, isolating those who stood atop it. Loyalty became currency, traded recklessly until there was nothing left to give. And yet, amid the chaos, glimmers of humanity shone through. Ivanka's yearning for independence, Melania's quiet rebellion, Barron's plea for normalcy. These weren't just the struggles of the Trumps. They were reflections of everyone navigating identity, ambition, and connection in a hypercritical world. For now, the spotlight burned brighter than ever. But as the dust settled, questions lingered. Could authenticity survive under such relentless scrutiny? Or was vulnerability the ultimate price of success? Donald Trump stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid, as though holding up a crumbling empire. His commanding presence had always been their anchor, but now cracks were forming, visible to anyone who dared look closely. "Let's focus," he barked, tapping a pen against the polished mahogany surface. "We have work to do." Yet beneath his bravado lay unease. He glanced around the room, noting the strained smiles and distant gazes. Ivanka avoided eye contact, Don Jr.'s jaw was clenched, Melania stared out the window, and Barron slouched in his chair, headphones dangling loosely from one ear. This wasn't unity. It was performance art. Ivanka sat stiffly, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She felt like an actress trapped in someone else's script, reciting lines she didn't write. Every step forward in her career seemed to pull her further away from herself. "You're doing great, sweetheart," Donald had said earlier that week, during a rare private moment. But his praise carried weight. He meant for the Brando, never just for her. "I can't keep living like this," she whispered under her breath, too softly for anyone to hear. Yet the thought lingered, gnawing at her resolve. Was it possible to be both Daddy's girl and her own woman? Melania traced the rim of her teacup with a manicured finger, lost in thought. She remembered the dreams she'd shelved, the runway shows, the quiet life in Slovenia, the freedom to simply exist without judgment. Instead, she'd become a symbol, a trophy wife molded by public perception. "They don't see me," she murmured aloud, surprising even herself. When all eyes turned to her, she added quickly, "They only see what they want." Her words hung heavy in the air, unacknowledged but understood. For years, she'd swallowed her resentment, letting it fester until it threatened to consume her entirely. Don Jr. shifted uncomfortably, his broad shoulders tense. No matter how hard he tried, he could never measure up. Not to his father's towering legacy, not to Ivanka's polished image, not even to Eric's easy charm. "He expects perfection," Don muttered to himself, gripping the edge of his seat. "But I'm not perfect." He wanted to scream it, to demand recognition for his efforts, for his loyalty, but instead he stayed silent, swallowing his frustration like bitter medicine. After all, anger didn't suit the Trump name. Barron scrolled through his phone, pretending not to listen. He hated these meetings, hated the way everyone talked over him as if he weren't there. All he wanted was to disappear, to trade this gilded cage for something real. "What about me?" he wondered silently, glancing at his family. "Do any of you care what I want?" His longing for normalcy burned brighter than ever, yet no one noticed, or maybe they chose not to. The meeting began innocuously enough, a discussion about upcoming projects, potential endorsements, strategies to maintain relevance. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. "We need cohesion," Donald insisted, his voice sharp, "not division." Ivanka exchanged a glance with Melania, who raised an eyebrow subtly. Cohesion? They couldn't even agree on dinner plans without conflict. As the conversation dragged on, old grievances bubbled to the surface, threatening to boil over. "You've changed," Donald snapped suddenly, pointing a finger at Ivanka. "You used to stand by my side, but now you're distancing yourself. Why?" Ivanka flinched, caught off guard. "That's not fair," she shot back, her voice trembling. "I'm trying to build something for myself, for us, but you act like I'm betraying you." Her words struck a nerve. Donald leaned forward, his face reddening. "For us? Or for you?" The room fell silent, the accusation hanging between them like a storm cloud. "I almost left," Melania interjected suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension like glass breaking. All eyes turned to her, wide with shock. "When?" Donald demanded, his tone sharp. "After the presidency," she admitted, her gaze steady despite the tremor in her voice. They couldn't take it anymore, the scrutiny, the pressure, the lies. Her confession stunned them into silence. Even Barron looked up, his headphones forgotten. "Why can't we just be normal?" Barron blurted out, his voice cracking with emotion. "Why does everything have to be so fake?" His question hit like a punch, forcing each family member to confront their own guilt. Normalcy? It sounded foreign. Impossible. Donald opened his mouth to respond but found no words. For once, the great showman was speechless. Accusations flew like arrows, each one finding its mark. Old wounds reopened, fresh ones formed. the weight of their shared history pressed down on them, suffocating. "This isn't a family," Ivanka cried, tears streaming down her face. "It's a business." And for the first time, no one argued, because deep down, they knew she was right. Donald's voice thundered through the room, each word a hammer striking an already fragile foundation. "You think I don't see it?" he bellowed, his face flushed with rage. "I built this empire for you, for all of us. And what do I get? Betrayal?" His eyes locked onto Ivanka, his tone sharp enough to cut steel. "You're out there playing your little games, chasing headlines instead of standing by me. Is that loyalty or just selfishness?" Then he turned to Melania, his accusation laced with bitterness. "And you've never truly supported me, not once, not when it mattered." The air crackled with tension, his words reverberating like echoes in a cavern. Tears welled up in Ivanka's eyes as she stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "How dare you?" she choked out, her voice trembling but defiant. "Do you have any idea what it's like to live under your shadow? To always be daddy's girl no matter how hard I try?" She wiped at her cheeks, her composure crumbling. "Every step I take, every decision I make, it's never enough for you. Because nothing will ever be more important than your name, your legacy." Her confession hung heavy in the air, raw and unfiltered. For the first time, she wasn't hiding behind polished smiles or diplomatic phrases. This was her truth, laid bare. Melania rose slowly, her movements deliberate, her expression unreadable until she spoke. "You want support?" she asked, her voice icy yet tinged with sorrow. "When have you ever given us support? When have you stopped to ask how we feel, how I feel?" She stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You're so consumed by power, by winning, that you can't even see the people around you. We're not pawns in your game, Donald, we're human beings." Her words struck like lightning, illuminating truths too long buried. Donald flinched visibly, though he tried to mask it with a scowl. Unable to bear another moment of the escalating chaos, Barron bolted from his seat. Without a word, he stormed out of the room, the sound of the door slamming shut reverberating like a gunshot. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with guilt and regret. Each family member froze, their thoughts colliding with the stark reminder of the toll their dysfunction had taken on the youngest among them. For the first time in decades, Donald found himself speechless. His mouth opened, then closed again as he processed the weight of what had just transpired. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in as the reality of his family's pain settled over him like a shroud. He lowered himself into his chair, his usual bravado replaced by something unfamiliar. As the echoes of their words replayed in his mind, Donald saw himself, not as the invincible titan he portrayed to the world, but as a man obsessed with control, blind to the emotional needs of those closest to him. "I've failed them," he thought, the realization hitting him like a freight train. He imagined how they must see him, a figurehead of ambition, yes, but also a void where love and connection should have been. This moment marked a seismic shift within Donald. The armor he'd worn for so long began to crack, revealing the man beneath, the one who questioned whether his relentless pursuit of success had come at too great a cost. Was it too late to repair what he'd broken? Could he find redemption in vulnerability? These questions lingered, unanswered but undeniable. Within hours of the leaked recording going viral, social media became a battleground. Supporters rallied behind Donald, painting him as a misunderstood patriarch besieged by critics who didn't understand the pressures of leadership. "They're tearing apart a family just to score political points," one fan tweeted passionately. Critics, however, seized on the dysfunction. "This is what happens when ego trumps humanity," wrote a prominent journalist. Hashtags like Trump family secrets and Mar-a-Lago leaks dominated trending lists, sparking heated debates across platforms. For every defense, there was a critique. For every apology demanded, there was forgiveness offered. The nation watched, transfixed, as the Trump dynasty's private turmoil unfolded in real time. Morning talk shows dissected the recording with surgical precision. CNN hosted a panel of psychologists who analyzed the psychological toll of living under constant scrutiny. "It's not just fame, it's survival," one expert explained. "Every move they make is judged, every word scrutinized." Late-night hosts turned the scandal into comedic gold. "Looks like Mar-a-Lago isn't leaking water, it's leaking secrets," quipped one host, earning thunderous applause from his audience. Yet even amid the jokes, moments of reflection emerged. Another comedian paused mid-routine, musing, "But seriously, can you imagine growing up like that? Fame sounds exhausting." The media circus raged on, amplifying both sympathy and scorn. Overwhelmed by the backlash, Donald retreated to his sprawling Bedminster estate, where silence reigned supreme. He wandered the manicured grounds alone, replaying fragments of the recording in his mind. Each accusation, Melania's piercing critique, Ivanka's tearful confession, Barron's quiet plea, echoed like ghosts haunting him. For the first time, he allowed himself to reflect. "What have I done?" he muttered aloud, sinking onto a bench overlooking the golf course. His relentless pursuit of success had cost more than money or reputation. It had fractured the very foundation of his family. In solitude, he began grappling with the sacrifices he'd made. Not just theirs, but his own. Back in New York, Ivanka hesitated before dialing Melania's number. Their relationship had always been polite but distant, bound more by circumstance than connection. But now, something deeper stirred within her. A longing for understanding, for unity. "Hi, Mom," she said softly when Melania answered. There was a pause before Melania replied, equally tentative. "Ivanka, how are you holding up?" Their conversation started cautiously but soon flowed freely, revealing shared struggles beneath their polished exteriors. By the end, tears welled in both their eyes, not out of pain, but relief. For the first time, they saw each other not as roles to play, but as women navigating the same storm. Melania sat alone in her bedroom, staring at an old photograph of herself before the White House years. Her dreams felt distant, almost foreign, yet still achingly familiar. Could she stay in a marriage that demanded so much of her soul? Or should she walk away, reclaiming pieces of herself long buried? After hours of reflection, she made her decision. She would give counseling a chance, not because she owed it to Donald, but because she owed it to herself. Perhaps healing wasn't about leaving or staying. Perhaps it was about finding balance between the two. When Barron returned home, Donald greeted him awkwardly, unsure how to bridge the chasm between them. "Hey, kiddo," he began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Barron looked up, his expression guarded. "Why does everything have to be so fake?" he asked quietly, echoing his earlier cry for normalcy. Donald swallowed hard, guilt washing over him. "I'm sorry, Barron," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I've let you down. You deserve better." For the first time, father and son embraced, not as public figures, but as humans yearning for connection. As details emerged about the family's efforts to reconcile, public perception began to soften. Fans posted heartfelt messages online. Even celebrities struggle. Let's give them space to heal. Critics tempered their tone, acknowledging the universal challenges of balancing ambition and relationships. The Trumps weren't untouchable icons anymore. They were flawed individuals navigating extraordinary circumstances, and somehow that vulnerability resonated deeply. Small acts of reconciliation offered a fragile but tangible hope. Donald's apology to Barron marked a turning point, while Ivanka and Melania's newfound bond hinted at deeper healing ahead. Even Melania's decision to seek counseling signaled a willingness to confront their shared pain. Trust remained fragile and the road ahead uncertain, but for the first time in years, the Trumps dared to believe that redemption might be possible, not through perfection, but through vulnerability. Donald Trump stood at the edge of his sprawling estate, gazing out at the horizon as if searching for answers in the distance. The relentless glare of the media spotlight had dimmed slightly since he stepped back from public appearances. "I'm done chasing approval," he muttered to himself, though the words felt foreign on his tongue. For decades, validation had been his currency, his worth measured in headlines and handshakes. But now something deeper called to him: family. He dialed Ivanka's number, his voice softer than usual. "I want to make things right," he said simply. Though trust remained fragile, this small act signaled a seismic shift. A man once consumed by power beginning to prioritize connection over control. Inspired by her own journey through identity and self-discovery, Ivanka launched a bold new initiative. Resilient Minds. At its core was a message she knew all too well: the courage it took to confront vulnerability. "Mental health isn't weakness, it's strength," she declared during a press conference, her voice steady but impassioned. "And we need to talk about it openly." Her campaign gained traction quickly, drawing praise not only from fans but also from critics who had long dismissed her as merely daddy's girl. Behind closed doors, Ivanka admitted to Don Jr., "This feels real, like I'm finally doing something that matters, not just for me but for everyone." For the first time, her work wasn't overshadowed by her last name. It stood on its own. Melania sat at her desk late one night, penning the final chapter of her memoir, Behind the Smile. Each word carried weight, revealing truths she'd buried beneath years of silence. "You marry fame, you sacrifice yourself," she wrote, her handwriting trembling slightly. "But I refuse to be forgotten or misunderstood anymore." When the book hit shelves, it became an instant bestseller. Critics hailed it as raw and unflinching, while readers found solace in its honesty. One passage struck a chord worldwide. "We are more than our roles, more than wives, mothers, daughters. We are human." The memoir sparked widespread discussions about gender roles and emotional labor, with women across industries sharing their own stories of sacrifice and resilience. Melania, once seen as enigmatic, emerged as a voice of quiet rebellion. Barron wandered into an art studio tucked away in a quiet corner of New York City, paintbrush in hand. For years he'd felt suffocated by expectations, his future mapped out before he could even dream for himself. Now, surrounded by canvases splashed with color, he found freedom. "This is who I am," he told Ivanka during a rare visit. "Not a politician's son, just me." His decision to pursue creative passions outside the political arena symbolized hope, not just for him, but for anyone yearning to break free from inherited legacies. In embracing authenticity, Barron offered a glimpse of what normalcy might look like after chaos. As details of the Trump's transformations emerged, public perception began to soften. Fans posted heartfelt messages online. "They're not perfect, but neither are we." Critics tempered their tone, acknowledging the universal challenges of balancing ambition and relationships. Late-night hosts joked less about scandals and more about humanity. "Turns out even celebrities cry," quipped one comedian, earning knowing laughter from the audience. The Trumps weren't untouchable icons anymore. They were flawed individuals navigating extraordinary circumstances, and somehow that vulnerability resonated deeply. The Trump story ignited a national conversation about the psychological toll of fame. Celebrities began speaking out, sharing their own struggles with mental health and public scrutiny. "This isn't just about them," tweeted a popular actress. "It's about all of us learning to see each other as humans, not headlines." Everyday people joined the dialogue, posting personal stories under hashtags like Behind the Smile and Real Talk. Schools hosted workshops on empathy. Workplaces implemented mental health programs, and communities rallied around calls for change. What started as a family scandal evolved into something larger, a movement toward understanding and compassion. In the end, the Trumps' journey served as a powerful reminder: no one is immune to struggle, not even those in the spotlight. By confronting their flaws and embracing vulnerability, they demonstrated the transformative potential of honesty and humility. "Strength isn't about never falling," Melania reflected during a rare interview. "It's about getting back up and letting others see you while you do." Their legacy would forever be complicated, marked by highs and lows alike. But perhaps, in their willingness to confront themselves, they left behind something invaluable, a mirror reflecting not just their imperfections, but ours too. And in that reflection lay hope, the kind that transcended fame, fortune, or status. Fame glittered like gold, but its weight bore down heavily on the Trumps. For years, they had worn their public personas like armor, deflecting criticism and projecting invincibility. Yet beneath the surface lay cracks, fractures born from relentless scrutiny, unspoken resentments, and the suffocating pressure to maintain perfection. As the dust settled on their tumultuous journey, it became clear that fame wasn't just a pedestal, it was a prison. And within its walls, humanity often went unnoticed, or worse, dismissed. "Even stars burn out," Ivanka mused one evening, her voice tinged with both sorrow and resolve. Her words resonated far beyond their family saga, echoing a universal truth. No amount of wealth or influence could shield anyone from the emotional toll of living under constant judgment. Donald stood at his desk, penning a rare personal statement. Each word felt foreign yet liberating, a confession of flaws he'd spent decades hiding behind bravado. "I've made mistakes," he wrote, his hand trembling slightly. "But I'm learning." It wasn't easy admitting vulnerability when the world expected infallibility, yet in doing so he discovered an unexpected strength. Honesty, once feared as weakness, now emerged as a beacon of hope, not just for himself, but for others watching silently from afar. When the statement went public, reactions were mixed. Some praised his candor, others mocked it. But among those who mattered most, his family, it sparked something profound: trust. "Dad's trying," Barron admitted softly during dinner, breaking weeks of strained silence. Those two simple words carried more weight than any headline ever could. The Trump's transformation didn't happen overnight. It unfolded gradually through small acts of courage and connection. Melania began attending therapy sessions not just for herself, but alongside Donald, determined to rebuild what years of neglect had eroded. Ivanka launched a mental health initiative inspired by her own struggles, using her platform to advocate for authenticity over appearances. "We're all human," she told reporters during a press conference, "and there's power in saying so." Even Don Jr., once overshadowed by expectations, found solace in stepping back from the spotlight, focusing instead on nurturing relationships with his siblings. Together, they forged a fragile yet meaningful bond, one rooted in shared pain and newfound understanding. For the first time, redemption seemed possible. Not through perfection, but through imperfection, embraced openly and honestly. As the curtain fell on this chapter of the Trump saga, audiences reflected on their own lives. Social media buzzed with stories of personal struggle, each post a testament to the universality of the themes explored: identity, sacrifice, and connection. "Maybe we're all wearing masks," one fan tweeted, sparking thousands of replies. Another added, "And maybe taking them off is the bravest thing we can do." The Trump story reminded viewers that fame amplified struggles, but it didn't create them. Behind every polished smile hid doubts, fears, and desires. For love, for normalcy, for meaning. In the end, their journey wasn't just about celebrities. It was about people. People yearning to be seen, heard, and understood. The tale concluded not with triumph, but with truth. A reminder that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but strength. By embracing imperfections, the Trumps inspired empathy, sparked change, and illuminated humanity's shared essence. "Courage isn't about never falling," Melania whispered to Ivanka during a quiet moment together. "It's about getting back up and letting others see you while you do." Their legacy would forever be complicated, marked by highs and lows alike. But perhaps, in their willingness to confront themselves, they left behind something invaluable. A mirror reflecting not just their flaws, but ours too. And in that reflection lay hope, the kind that transcended fame, fortune, or status.